Hi, I'm Christina Lowery, and I have the great honor of leading Girl Rising. At Girl Rising, we envision a world in which girls thrive with dignity and vast possibilities. Like everyone else, we're stuck in our homes right now. So in this series of conversations, I'm hoping to bring you an unfiltered view of the reality of girls around the world, of our work, and of the people behind it. Today, I'm speaking with Nasreen Samad, Girl Rising's program manager in Pakistan. Before we begin, I just want to ground us all in some of the realities facing girls across the country. Only 38% of girls in Pakistan complete secondary school. Pakistan has the second largest population of out-of-school girls in the world. 18% of young women in Pakistan are married before the age of 18. But Pakistan, like every country, has much to gain from investing in girls' education. Each extra year of secondary school can help a young woman increase her future earnings by 10 to 20%. Girls' education is one of the best investments we can make. I wanted to just start by having you tell us a little bit about, would you just tell me a little bit about yourself, about your own background, and as you were growing up, what education meant to you and your family?
Sure. So my name is Nasreen Samad, and I'm the program manager for Girl Rising, and I'm leading Explore More program here in Pakistan. And basically, I am from north part of Pakistan, and there's this town called Chitral. I'm basically from Chitral, one of the mountainous and remotest part in Pakistan. And when I was 3 years old, my family moved down to Karachi, which is a metropolitan economic hub of Pakistan. And one of the main reasons to move to Karachi was that by then, education infrastructure of Chitral was not very well developed. And my parents were very passionate about our education. While growing up, I had this sense of direction that, how important education is for us. And once I was done with my master's, I decided to go back to Chitral. There, I started working with a social enterprise called Move Limited. And mainly we were working with young girls and women in handicraft sector. They were already very skilled. And our role was mainly to give them technical assistance. So one of the good experience was to help to facilitate, actually, to support them in terms of using their own stories, and out of that they started making tapestries and different handicraft products. Initially they were very shy, and because though the education infrastructure of Chitral improved a lot, but economic opportunities were less, and it had kind of toll on their mental health and self-esteem as well. Anyhow, during this whole process, they came up with wonderful designs which were represented internationally and nationally as well. And I could see that just by acknowledging their own local stories, which we are also doing at Girl Rising, it was very meaningful for me in terms of knowing my own identity and getting to know about my own culture. So yeah, the appreciation I got from local communities and from my mentors over there kind of gave me this encouragement, and I would say spark, to continue working in social sector and to work with diverse communities across Pakistan. Later, I went to University of Melbourne to do my master's in development studies, and now it has been 9 years since I'm working in this sector.
And tell me, development is so broad. Development studies are so broad, and there's so much need, right? There's so many different areas to focus on. Why have you chosen to focus on women and girls?
So initially, as I mentioned, initially it was like my first organization, my parent organization. Their focus was on women and girls. And with that experience, I could see that when we invest on women or girls, it has a lot of influence, or it has more impact in terms of changing lives of their children and their families as well.
Mm.
So even research shows that if women are educated, if women have economic opportunities, then they are the one who would invest like the major chunk of their income into their children's health and education. So I could see it like this was like first-hand experience of me seeing the whole process in which women not only improve their own well-being, but they directly improve the well-being of everyone around them. And secondly, there is a disparity in like every field of life. So whether we see the disparity in education, whether in even in access to transportation, or access to different opportunities. So women are still struggling. So it is important in terms of equity as well. Both men and women both should have opportunities to have a balanced, I would say, society where both can flourish together.
If you had to describe the reality for girls in Pakistan, and I know that's a broad question and there's a ton of variation like in any country.
If we there are places where the girls do not have access to higher education. So, or I would say where girls get married at a very young age. So these could be some of the norms, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
That could be there. In addition, very basic things like access to, as I mentioned previously, access to transportation. So if you do not have access to transportation, then you do not have access to healthcare services. It's very, very difficult for me to generalize,
Of course.
because Pakistan is very diverse. So for example, if I describe my own part of Pakistan, northern areas, there women are more educated, as they are actually getting opting for PhDs and higher studies. But and in upcoming years, I would say there would be more women would be more educated as compared to men. But again, there are other regions where, for example, in Balochistan, it is lowest in terms of literacy. And women, especially girls' education or girls' literacy is very low.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very different for each province, and I would say each district. And from my experience, I would say that all those macro level decisions or macro level policies alone cannot bring the change. So community centric approaches will have a better impact, because culture is kind of different and issues are different. For example, if we go to few other districts, and like majority of the districts in rural areas, there's poverty there. There's issue of access. So when you do not have access to, for example, schools, or when school is at a certain distance, then most of the parents would not feel safe to send their daughters to those schools. So ultimately, it's going to create more disparity.
Describe a little bit about what the situation is now for girls with the pandemic, and schools, I understand, are still closed down in Pakistan. So you've described a little bit about what the reality is for girls before COVID, but what is the situation now?
Okay, just I would like to mention that there are around 22.8 million children which are out of school. So, and this disparity at primary level is a bit higher. So around 32% of primary school going age girls are out of school, compared to 21% of boys. So this situation is there, and with COVID, all educational institutions are closed, which means that most probably children who do have access to internet or who have computers, they can get benefit from online teaching or online resources, but majority do not have access to internet. But luckily, government of Pakistan has recently started national broadcast education channel to mitigate this, loss faced by students during the whole lockdown period, so that students who are in rural communities, they can also get timely get who can also continue their education. However, uh, one area that needs more attention is child protection, because there's a lot of focus on keeping children safe from coronavirus, but we need to talk about their physical and mental safety as well. So, for example, if any parent is affected by coronavirus, or especially the household where families are living below poverty level, or and so there are chances that most likely they are going to pull their children completely out of school. So that is another, like, my apprehension, that there is a possibility that large number of girls and boys might not return to school after this situation. Girls are supposed to, or they are, like, spending a lot of time on house chores. So I'm not sure if they are able to continue or paying equal attention to your studies during this period as well.
As you said, there are so many that communities and community-based solutions even before this were really what needs to happen because of the great differences between communities. Are you seeing any either young people or teachers or organizations during this time who are innovating in ways that, despite the challenges and not to diminish those, that gives you some sense of optimism?
So, as you know, we are working with different partners here, and I think they are a source of motivation for me in terms of their commitment, not just like before this situation, even during this situation. They are so very passionate in terms of getting engaged with the communities, in extending their support to the communities. At Girl Rising, what basically we are doing is we are putting a lot of focus on emotional well-being of children. So I think similar sort of initiatives would be needed, because there is already a lot of focus on academic improvement or grades, or but whatever children are going right now, they would need a bit of creative approach.
I'd love to go back to something you mentioned at the beginning, which is the very first job that you had out of school and out of your master's. And you mentioned that in that job, the girls and young women, part of it was making a space for them to tell their stories. Why do you think why is that so impactful, and why is it so important?
So when we sit with people and we ask them to describe their life stories, and when we listen to them while discussion, we could see the gaps. And even, like, it happened a lot that during this process, when they discuss things, they come up with their own solutions. They share each other, they listen to each other's stories, and even I got to share my stories. So it was a kind of mutual process of learning. I think, when we listen to stories, we actually uh, give equal dignity to the other person. And yeah, and that is like we are doing it at Girl Rising as well, where we believe that every ordinary person have extraordinary life or extraordinary story. And all these stories, if we start hearing all these different stories, then we can celebrate, or we can understand the diversity within humanity.
Beautifully said. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. It's so much of what our work is based on that very idea that everybody is in fact extraordinary, and every ordinary person has extraordinary stories, and that there are so many people in the world whose stories have not been there hasn't been a space for them, or they haven't been valued. So Nasreen, thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.